AMM 112L Denim Jeans Demo Part 2, Front Details. So in this demonstration we're going to be going over the details that go in the front of your jeans. So I'm going to go ahead and lock my shape layer, create a new layer, and this is where my details are going to go. I'm going to call my layer Details and click OK. And I'm going to zoom in. And the first thing that we usually need to do is the front waistband, because there's a waistband on the jeans. Best, easiest way when you're a beginner to get a nice smooth curve is to go ahead and make it like a little V. Just like that, a straight line. Go ahead and select the line, reflect it, click reflect, put the bullseye, the pivot point in the middle, swing it on over, press Shift, Alt, release the mouse, release the keyboard. And go ahead with the white arrow, select the front 2 points, and you're going to average on both and right click and join. Then what you're going to do is you're going to go where the pen tool is, and in the last version, open up the menu, and the last version is Convert Anchor Point. And that's how you can stretch out those handles, make them perpendicular to this middle line. And if it's still a little too low, you can always click with the white arrow and move it up with the keyboard arrow keys. And this makes it the most nicest, most natural curve. It's better than eyeballing it. Once you have experience, you can actually draft half and then go ahead and mirror it. But when you're new, this will actually give you a nicer curve. You don't want it too deep. Obviously, if you go down like that, that is way too deep. I have seen people sometimes do that. So around here is where you want it to be. Okay, so next you want another line, because that will be the bottom of your waistband. So you can go ahead and press Alt, select this with your selection tool, your black arrow, and press Alt and just drag it down, and you make a copy. And then you have to determine, based on your jeans, because you're going to be drafting your jeans based on the ones you brought in, you have to determine how wide your waistband is. For some of you, it's about this wide. Some of you might be thinner. Rule of thumb is women's jeans have a thinner waistband, and men's jeans tend to have a wider waistband, but it depends on the style. But we're just going to go by average. And you're going to go with the white arrow and just elongate the lines to make sure that they meet. Make sure that they meet. Don't leave gaps, because that makes it look sloppy. Okay. If your jeans dip down more and your waistband's really thin, you would probably see the bottom of the band from the inside. Here it's almost equal, but we're not. So we're just going to see the top stitching that goes under the very top edge. So that brings me to the details that go on the waistband, which is the top stitching. Okay. So we're going to have typically a row of stitching here and a row of stitching here. Okay, that's what we consider typical. So again, I'm going to take this line, I'm going to press Alt to make a copy. Only this time I'm going to make the stroke about 0.5 or 0.25. You want the stroke thin, okay, because this is where all the stitching is going to come from. Then you're going to go ahead and show options in terms of your stroke. If you have CS6, just select show options, and it'll give you an expanded options list. Dash in the gap somewhere around 1 point or 0.5. Definitely want round cap. And I'm going to move it up. You want it very close to the edge. That's really good. And play with the dash in the gap, play with the stitch until you're happy with it. And I'm going to do the same with this. I'm going to make a copy. Only this time, all I need to do is keep it selected, grab my eyedropper tool, select my first stitch line, and look at that. How perfect is that? It copies the dash, the dash and the gap. It copies what is it, butt cap or round cap, and it copies the stroke weight. So there's no reason why most of your stitching shouldn't be consistent, because now you have the eyedropper tool to help you with that. Okay. Also, we should see the top stitching on the inside back, which is right here. So this is pretty simple. You just draft a straight line with your pen tool. Press Shift to make it nice and straight. and keep the dashed line, and that's what we would see. Next, you're going to have a button with a buttonhole. So to make the perfect circle, use the ellipse tool and press shift, and you're going to make a circle. And take off the dashed line, keep it solid. And it has to be smaller, obviously, than the width of your waistband. Also the buttonhole, typically we have a zigzag stitching that goes behind it, so let me zoom in so you can see how we typically do this. Okay. So I've made a line, and you get the circumference from your button, so do the button first, and then I'm going to select my line, go under Effect, Distort and Transform, and select Zigzag. Okay, so again, go under Effect, select Distort and Transform, and then select Zigzag. Make sure you click on Preview. Now it's going to look weird at first, don't panic. First thing off is you need to make the size really small. So you want to actually punch it, you actually type it in. So around 0.05, 0.8, sometimes 0.10. Definitely under a point though. So you can do 0.8, 0.9. And then you want to increase ridges per segment. When it comes to the ridges per segment, I do recommend use the slider, not type it in, because it's too hard to determine. You're better off just doing using the slider. Okay. And next, you want the button to actually have a white fill, because you don't want this showing. You actually want this hiding underneath the button. So two things you can do. One is with the white arrow, bring it in a little bit like this. And then what you want to do is you want to get your button, and you want to add, make sure you can see your swatches. I'm going to go Window Swatches. Make sure that you give your button a white fill. Not stroke, fill. Keep my black stroke. There we go. And what I want to do, and you're probably thinking, well, it has white fill, so this won't show through, but I'm still seeing it through. Remember, I drafted the button before, which is what you need to do anyways, before the buttonhole. So guess what? You have to actually right-click, arrange, and bring to front. Ta-da! Okay. And then you can go ahead if you want and group it. Right-click and group, and that way when you move it, nothing gets separated. Okay. And that's your button with your buttonhole. Next that goes on the waistband are the belt loops. Okay, so fastest way to do belt loops is rectangle tool. And how long it has to be, well, it's going to depend obviously on how wide your waistband. Like this is a little bit long. Rule of thumb is the men's belt loops are wider and longer than the females, typically. They do oftentimes pass the boundaries of the waistband, so they should be a little bit past the boundaries, but not too much. So I'm checking. This is a very good length for that. Let me zoom in. Typically what a belt loop has, typical, some are actually a little different, so you're going to have to look at your pair of jeans, but standard, we have a row of stitching. I'm going to press shift, and this is where the stitching can get even thinner than your other stitching. You might even want to give this weight like 0.15 instead of 0.25 because it's on a belt loop. And then I want to give it a dashed line. Round cap. And then I'm going to press Alt, select it, press Alt, and make the copy. You just want to make sure that it's even. Then you're going to draft a line the width of your belt loop. So I'm going to click, press shift, make sure it's solid, and I'm going to make that, go to Effect, Distort and Transform, and Zigzag. I'm going to make that a zigzag because that's typically a reinforcement stitch. So again, on the sides I'm going to put 0.8, and then the ridges per segment, I'm going to go ahead. And in fact, that's still a little too big, so I'm going to put 0.08, and then change the, there we go, that's better. It has to be under 0.10. Now if you notice, if you have even ridges per segment, one starts up and one ends down, but if I make it odd, they both end up on the top, the little end points. So that's what you want, consistency. Once you're happy, click OK. One thing I did notice that I didn't check for before is that, look, it has white fill, so take out the fill. We don't want fill, we just want black stroke. And going back to 0.15. There we go. And I'm going to move it down to the very top because it's a reinforcement stitch, and then I'm just going to press Alt while I select it with a black arrow, and I have a top and the bottom. And make sure you zoom in and nothing's sticking out. Okay, so this is my belt loop once I'm happy with it. Another thing you have to do is actually give it a white fill. The reason why I want to show you is that if I drag it on over, I just gave it a white fill, but if I didn't, you can see the waistband behind it, and I see formed belt loops done like that all the time, and that looks terrible. Okay, you don't actually want that. Okay, so you want to make sure that you have. And another thing, you want to make sure that your rectangle has the white fill. The only thing that should have the white fill is your rectangle. None of your stitching should have white fill. Okay, so any of your stitching has white fill, you got to make sure you remove it. Okay. None of your zigzags should have white fill. Once you're done, a good idea would be to group it, so whenever you move it, it's all together. When you press Alt, it'll just do a copy. Now, if your belt loops are really close to the edge, and they can be straight, but usually they're a little further out, like around here. And if you keep them straight, it doesn't look right. You need to actually rotate, but freehand rotate works really well. So with the black arrow, get that double-ended arrow and just rotate. And the idea is that the ends of your belt loop should be parallel to the waistband. Okay? And if you have another one here, you just do another copy and you put it here. Okay? That takes care of your belt loop. Next is your pocket. Front pockets, it depends. Women's jeans, especially the more lower the rise, the shallower the pockets. So the pockets are going to be really narrow. Kind of like this. And at this point, you do want to increase the stroke a little bit. Keep it at about either 1 point or 0.75. So if it's a really shallow pocket, this is what it tends to look like. If it's not such a low-rise jean, usually they're a little bit longer, a little bit deeper about here. So we're looking at for a pocket. Typically, we also have a little pocket inside, that impossible pocket where hardly anything fits. You don't really know the purpose of it, but it exists. Okay, so then you draft a little rectangle. Some of you had different pockets from what I saw, so you just have to really observe your jeans to see what kind of pocket we're looking at. In terms of what's standard, usually we have 2 rows of stitching underneath the pocket. So what you're going to do is select your pocket line, press Alt, move it down, select the stroke and the dash, select one of your previous stitches so you can get that stitch, and then go with your white arrow and fix. You want to make your stitching as even as possible. And then I'm going to go ahead and make another row. I'm going to select it and press Alt, bring it down. And again, I'm going to select on the stitch so it mimics. I'm going to use the white arrow. Picking up the wrong line. I'm a little too close to that belt loop. Move that on over. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more to help me so I can see. There we go. Now I can get the line, make it longer. There we go. Much better. Okay. And I can go ahead and select my belt loop. Put it around here. Also, what we typically see here are rivets. So basically you're going to, no, and I'm not trying to sound like a frog, it's basically the little metal disc that keeps things from busting out. So you're just going to press shift, make sure you have solid lines, and you're going to press shift with the ellipse tool. So you're going to draft 2 circles, one a little larger than the other, and you're going to make their stroke really thin. So we're talking 0.15 or 0.25, nothing bigger than 0.25. I'm going to do 1.5. Let me zoom in. And then I'm going to go ahead and take the little one and bring it on over, and my smart guides will tell me when it's in the center, which is great. And that is what my rivet looks like. Actually, the center should probably be a little smaller. I'm going to scale it. There we go. Also, another thing that you need to do is you need to give the big circle and the small circle and right click, arrange front to back, and the small circle should also have white fill, because if you don't, the stitches are going to show through. Okay, and you can go ahead and group it, and now when I make a copy, it just makes a copy, and literally you just do one and let the program do the rest. That's what we love about Illustrator. There you go. Look how easy that is. Wonderful. Typically we see stitching, about 2 rows of stitching, or at least 1 row on the inside pocket, but usually 2. So you're basically going to want to mimic that, and I'm going to go ahead and use the eyedropper tool and get the stitching. As you can see, I'm slightly off, so I'm going to go ahead and with that white arrow fix it. That's why we like that white arrow. The direct selection tool will allow us to fix it. And typically we have 2 rows. Well, sometimes you have 1, so it's going to depend on your jeans. You can eyeball it and just go ahead and go with the white arrow and fix it. Again, that's why we love that white arrow. It allows us to go back and fix it. And typically we do see rivets on here as well, so I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of that and put one, press Alt, make a copy and put it on this corner and put it on this corner. Now for some reason, I guess I undid and I don't have the right send and arrange and bring to front. It does have the white fill. That's better. Okay, so this is what a typical front pocket looks like. Now you only have to do 1, because what you do is, after this you can go ahead and mirror it on over. So anything that you want to mirror on over, that's what you want to do. So for example, all this that I just did, like all these details, I want to mirror on over. I also want to, I'm going to select shift and select my belt loop, because I want that to be reflected as well. Now I can click reflect, click right in the middle, and I'm just going to bring it on over, press shift, alt, release the mouse, release the keyboard. Now I have all my details on the other side. The only thing that's different though is that the other side usually doesn't have the small pocket. That's usually on one side. Okay, if it happens to be on both, then make sure you do on both, but if not, then it's just on one. And I notice I didn't reflect my rivet right here, so I'm going to add the other one. There you go. Okay, other details. And it has white fill, so I need to arrange, right click, link to front. There we go. Position it there. Okay, so another detail that we need to have, okay, is a front seam. Look, we don't have a front seam. It looks like we do, but that's because that's from the croquis. So fastest, easiest way is get a pen tool and literally use that front line to the bottom of the crotch, press shift, and you have a nice straight line. You do want to keep that at about 0.75 strokes. I'm going to make it thicker. Okay. See, now I have a line. Okay. Next is the fly. So I'm going to zoom in into this area, and typically speaking, for men's jeans, it's a little bit wider for women and longer, and for females, it's a little bit shorter. So it just depends on your jeans. This is an average rise, average, it's not low rise, it's average. And a good starting point for you to notice is use your buttonhole. So usually around the width of the end of the buttonhole is where your fly should actually be. And the first part of the fly is straight, and then you're going to curve it like that. Okay. Show you again. So you're going to start off, and men's jeans we're talking a little bit longer like this, possibly even like that, and then you curve it. But it does depend again on your jeans. You're going to have to really look at your jeans and see where yours is at. But you're going to press shift, and then okay. And make sure that there's no fill. See, mine has fill, so I took out that fill. No fill in the details. Next, I'm going to make, it's usually one row of stitching right next to that center seam. So I'm going to press Alt, bring it over, eyedropper tool. There you go. And I want to make sure that it's really close to that line. Perfect. Okay, and it's going to actually reach to the bottom. You can extend it to reach the bottom. Now typically the fly is also stitch lines. Okay, there we go. So it's a stitch line, and we want another row. We usually have 2 rows, so I'm going to press Alt, make a copy, and then go with the white arrow and extend that. Okay. If the curve looks a little weird, you can go back and smooth that out or fix it, but don't make copies unless you're happy with it. Like even this looks a little odd to me, so I'm actually going to take this one out, or I can undo. You can actually go back and undo right there. Really close to the edge, and there's no fill. And again, eyedropper tool, copy the stitching. Make a copy, press Alt, and just go with the white arrow. And if you just press Alt and just drag it off to the side, the only thing you need to modify is the very bottom and just make it longer. Go back, which is a little bit easier. And having to modify everything, both ends. So that's ideally what you want. And you want those handles perpendicular to this line, ideally. That will give you the best outcome. This one actually isn't perfectly perpendicular, see, and that already starts improving quite a bit. Also, what you typically have under the fly is you have another row of stitching, and it usually kind of curves like this. And then it goes straight, and then it kind of stops short a little bit higher, and then it just kind of curves in like that. It keeps going. So we typically have that, and then we have typically a zigzag stitch that kind of runs through here, the solid line, and again you're going to go under Effect, Distort and Transform, and zigzag, and again 0.08, increase the ridges per segment, and click OK. And sometimes the line's a little shorter, it just depends. You usually see it about there. Okay. Sometimes you also see a little reinforcement zigzag here. Just depends on your pair of jeans. Okay. Next, what we have, we usually have your inseam stitching. So basically, you're just going to draft one line and just basically follow. And then you get the line and you go ahead and use the eyedropper tool and copy the stitching. And you do the same thing on the other side. Or you can do one and actually reflect it. Just probably better. Actually, that would give you more accuracy, which is what you want. So, the only thing I noticed is right here, I started a little in too far. So I'm going to select my endpoint here, which is here. Should have zoomed in. That's why I always tell you guys, zoom in, zoom in. This is why. Okay, and now what I can do is select my line, reflect. You want to see the curve at this point. Shift, Alt, release the keyboard, release the mouse, release the keyboard. And then Pro key. Now I have inseams there. Also, we have one row of stitching on the very bottom, which is straight. Some of you might have two rows, but typically we have one, just one. You can just make a copy and bring it on over. And your smart guides will help you line them up. Okay, that's typically what you have at the bottom. Never leave it blank. And also typically what we see, let me zoom in, is we have your side seam right here. Bring on over this rivet a little bit. And a good thing to do would be to lock your detail layer, go to your shape and unlock that, get your white arrow and actually select this side seam, and then edit, copy, lock, go to your detail layer, unlock that, edit, paste in front, so it pastes the line, and then move it on over with the arrow key and select your eyedropper tool and select the stitch. Move it back, but it actually, and it should actually start down here. It shouldn't be that long actually. It's actually going to run the the length. I don't want it on the actual waistband though, so I'm going to go ahead and use my scissor tool and just cut it. It intersects right here, and I can snip that. Okay. So this is a curve that's a little harder to achieve, so I'm copying that curve. But after that, I'll go ahead and follow the length of the pant, and that will be the stitching that follows basically the side seam. Okay, so you just follow, stretch it out, and do it all the way to the bottom, reflect on the other side. And the only thing here though is that you will usually have a reinforcement stitching about here on the fullest part of the hip. Go ahead and make a diagonal line, a solid, and then turn it into a dashed line. So go under Effect, Distort and Transform, Zigzag. Again, make the size 0.08 and use the sliders to increase the ridges per segment. And it's either usually at a diagonal or it's fully horizontal. Either way, this is a reinforcement stitch that we usually see at the fullness part of the hip. And just make sure that your stitch runs all the way to the bottom of the jeans, and go ahead and reflect that onto the other side. And that pretty much takes care of the front details of your jeans.